Welcome back to High Stakes. Elevate your game by subscribing to our channel so you never miss our daily content. For exclusive access to our premium betting picks, join our Patreon. Find the link in the comments section below. Stay ahead with High Stakes. Denver Broncos versus Indianapolis Colts. Although the Colts didn't make many moves this offseason, some key pieces have been signed to extensions. Michael Pittman Jr. was put on the franchise tag and Jack Anderson was signed to an extension in March. Ronnie Harrison was also signed along with Raekwon Davis and Joe Flacco during March. Levi Bell was also added to the roster in July. Throughout the summer, Indianapolis made several re-signings with players such as Danny Pinter, Trey Sermon, Kenny Moore, and exercised a fifth-year option Kwity Paye. The Colts aren't true contenders, but with Richardson coming back from injury, they could have a solid chance to make the playoffs. The Colts finished just inside the top 15 in yards per game offensively with 336.8. They finished just inside the top 20 in passing yards per game, 215.6, and just inside the top 10 in rushing yards per game, 121.1. Even so, they still were 11th in points per game with 23.3. Gardner Minshew came in to replace Anthony Richardson since Week 4 of the season and threw for 3,305 yards while completing 62.2% of his passes. His touchdown-to-interception ratio was not great, throwing 15 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Zach Moss ended up with the most yards rushing overall on the season while Jonathan Taylor held out for a better contract. Even so, Taylor was only 53 rushing yards away from Moss, who ended up with 794 on the year. Taylor ended up eclipsing Moss in rushing touchdowns with 7 while Moss had 5. Michael Pittman Jr. was far and away the number 1 receiver with 1,152 yards, 109 catches, and 4 touchdowns. Defensively, Indianapolis let up 349.8 yards per contest, ranking 9th worst in the NFL. They ranked 16th in passing defense, allowing 226 yards per game, but they were 24th in rushing defense by allowing 123.8 yards per game. This ultimately led to the Colts giving up the 5th most points in the league per game with 24.4. Zaire Franklin led the defense with 179 tackles and 107 solo tackles. Samson Ebukam had 9.5 sacks and led the team while Kwity Paye was right behind him with 8.5. Julian Blackmon led the secondary with 8 passes defended and a team-high 4 interceptions. I expect the offense to be on the field a bit more on this year, which will ultimately help the defense from getting tired early. Nevertheless, the defense needs to improve if they are to compete for a playoff spot. The Denver Broncos are turning a new leaf as the Russell Wilson experiment failed tremendously. Jonas Griffith was signed to a 1-year extension and Denver exercised their 5th-year option on Patrick Surtain too. They were also active in March with some eyebrow-raising moves. Justin Simmons was released and Jerry Jeudy was traded to the Browns for a 5th and 6th round pick. As a result, the Broncos signed Lil Jordan Humphrey, Brandon Jones, and Malcolm Roach. Matt Peart received a 1-year contract, Justin Reynolds got a 2-year deal, and Justin Strnad was resigned this offseason. They also acquired Zach Wilson from the Jets, but declined his 5th-year option. There are limited expectations for the Broncos this year, but their fans are craving for any sign of improvement. Despite the acquisition of Sean Payton last year, the Broncos still ranked 26th in total yards per game with 298.4. They were 24th in passing yards per game with 191.9 and 18th in rushing yards per contest with 106.5. This led to an average of an even 21 points per game for the offense, ranking 19th in the league. Russell Wilson ultimately led the Broncos in passing with 3,070 yards and a touchdown-to-interception ratio of 26-8. He was able to complete 66.4% of his passes as well, but it wasn't enough considering the capital Denver gave up for him. He's gone and Colorado is hoping Bo Nix is the answer for the future. Javonte Williams led the ground game with 774 yards on 214 carries and 3 rushing touchdowns. Wilson was 3rd in rushing with 341 yards and tied with Williams in rushing touchdowns with 3 as well. Courtland Sutton led the receiving corps with 772 yards, but Jeudy was close behind with 758 yards. The key difference was Sutton's 10 receiving touchdowns compared to Jeudy's 2. Sutton also barely edged out Judy in receptions with 59-54. It will be interesting to see who will step up among Denver's receivers on the offense. On defense, Alex Singleton led the squad with 177 total tackles and 106 solo tackles. Jonathan Cooper had 8.5 sacks despite being listed as a linebacker, and Zach Allen was the runner-up on the team with 5 sacks of his own. Pat Surtain too had a team-high 12 passes defended, while Justin Simmons led the team with 3 interceptions and had 8 total passes defended. As a unit, however, there was a lot left to be desired. They ranked 4th worst in the NFL in yards per game with 370.8, 22nd in passing yards against per game with 233.6, and 30th in rushing yards per contest with 137.1. Denver will need to have a complete role reversal if they are to be competitive this season. I like the Broncos here, as there are many more available positions for players to fill as the roster gets trimmed. The Colts have most of their roster solidified with the exception of depth pieces, giving the Broncos an edge, as they will be playing for the right to some key spots in the roster. Anthony Richardson is the obvious starting QB for the Colts, while the competition for the starting spot is up in the air for the Broncos. I expect Sean Payton to put his all into this year, as questions are starting to form about his poor form in Denver. Take Denver Broncos moneyline. At the risk of re-injury, I don't expect Anthony Richardson to play much in this game, leading to a drop-off in talent at the QB position, unless Prime Flacco comes back. Zach Wilson is still a mediocre QB at best, and Bo Nix is only a rookie, so he will need some time to grow. Considering this is the first preseason game, I expect both teams to be a bit more relaxed on the offensive side as they look to gel rather than scoring points. These games are mainly to get the confidence up in their premier players, while also looking at potential depth pieces on the roster. While it could happen for one squad, I don't envision both teams scoring more than 20 points in this game. Take under 38 points. Dallas Cowboys versus Los Angeles Rams. The Dallas Cowboys seemingly come into every season as genuine Super Bowl threats, and after the improvements across the field a year ago, they enter 2024 with those same expectations under Mike McCarthy, who sits firmly on the hot seat. Unsurprisingly, the Cowboys ranked high on both sides of the ball a season ago, with their 371.6 yards per game ranking them 5th in the league, while the defense was one of just 5 teams to allow under 300 yards per game on the season, leading them to a 12-5 record and another NFC East crown. This offseason, they've made very few moves, adding Ezekiel Elliott back to this roster while releasing the likes of Michael Gallup, but in recent days it's the situation involving CeeDee Lamb that's caused headlines, as they have now placed him on the Did Not Report list, putting his status for this game to unlikely. With such a strong interior, however, this is a team that's expected to do big things in 2024, with this just the first step to long overdue success. Then there's the Dak Prescott contract situation and his ankle issues. Expect a preseason full of Cooper Rush and Trey Lance at quarterback. Last season was an up-and-down year for Los Angeles, and after failing to go deep in the playoffs with a loss to the Detroit Lions, they lost one of the franchise's most iconic players in the offseason, with Aaron Donald announcing his long-awaited retirement. While the team has shown an ability to replace players and get the best out of them, losing arguably this generation's best defensive player won't be easy production to replicate, especially in a very tough NFC West division. Now, breakout wide receiver Puka Nacua has also suffered an off-season injury, and while he's not in danger of missing the season opener, he will be another notable absence from the preseason. With Matthew Stafford expected to be healthy in 2024, the sky is the limit for this team with one of the most talented wide receiver duos in the NFL. And after ranking 7th in total yards a season ago with Stafford missing 2 games, optimism is once again high in Los Angeles. As usual with preseason games, the amount of snaps from starters will play a big role in the outcome, but in recent times it's been the Cowboys to win this head-to-head rivalry, picking up wins in their past 2 games. The Rams will turn to Stetson Bennett for most of the game since Jimmy Garoppolo is suspended for 2 games in the regular season due to PED issues. With arguably the best defensive line in the NFL, the Cowboys have plenty of different ways to win games, and with the advantage in the trenches on both sides of the ball in this game along with health and chemistry, expect the Cowboys to get another Super Bowl chase off to a fantastic 1-0 start. Take Dallas to win. The preseason is a time usually dominated by defense, but when these two teams meet, the offense usually wins the day, with the over sitting at 6-4 in their past 10 meetings, with one or both teams scoring over 30 points in 8 of those 10 matchups. In the preseason a year ago, the Rams were absolutely dominated, allowing scores of 41, 34, and 34, and while the offense didn't have it going, the health of Matthew Stafford this time around could do wonders for this offense early in the preseason. For the Cowboys, the offense tallied almost 400 yards per game a season ago, and with the return of Ezekiel Elliott to go along with an always elite offensive line, they'll look to get things going early after averaging over 28 points per game in the preseason in 2023. Keep it simple, take the over 42 points.